doesn't it just stand to reason that my success rate of selling those houses is going to be substantially higher? So basically, if I am only listing 55% of my listings, I am probably selling 95% of them. Or vice versa. If you're brand new and you're listing 90%, you're probably selling 60%. And I'm only going to give you 60 because we're in a seller's market right now. If we're not in a seller's market, you're probably selling about 50% of them. Sound about right?
Yes.
In this area? Good. So basically, it doesn't matter. 95-55 or 55-95, it doesn't matter. You can come up with the same number at the end. My point is, do what's right for you, but keep your plan legitimate so that you have the right numbers at the end. Fair enough? Any questions on that? The next question is very straightforward. What's the average listing sale price? In other words, go back to the MLS, look at your sales that you were the listing agent for last year, add up the sale price, not the listing price, the sale price, and figure out your average and type that number in here. If you don't have enough of a history of last year's sales, you're going to go up to Dean and say, Dean, in my area, what's the average sale price? And Dean will tell you.
Yep, in Rhode Island right now it's $250 is the average
$250?
sales price, but we can make it specific to your market area.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to go $250 for right now. Now for demonstration purposes only, because we're not going to talk about how much commission you should or should not receive, I'm going to say that you're listing at 3%. If you are listing $250,000, if you're selling a house at $250,000 with a 3% commission, you're looking at an average commission per sale of $7,500. That's what we call the GCI, gross commission income. And what GCI means is that's the commission before anybody is paid. It's the commission before anyone is paid. Okay? Any questions on that? We'll do the exact same thing now on the buyer side. Same question. What percentage of buyer consulting, what do you call interviews? Buyer consulting interviews convert into what I call a buyer contract, a buyer listing. Okay, now let's define these two words for business planning purposes. For business planning purposes, a buyer appointment or a buyer interview, as Dean calls it, is this. It's any time that you are in front of a buyer, either on the phone, face-to-face, whatever it may be, okay, where you have the opportunity to find out what they're looking for, to find out when they're looking for it, how much they want to spend, and whether you do it or not, you have the opportunity to say to them, hey, do you have a realtor? No? Do you mind if I just explain to you why you should consider using me as your buyer agent? Here's what a buyer agent does, and here's why I'm the buyer agent that you should be using. And one of my favorite things when I was a broker, ask Pete, poor Pete, he dealt with years of me, okay, and Dean's heard it a couple times too. I will walk by a brand new buyer agent, not a brand new, and I'll walk by an agent that I know works with buyers, and I'll stop and I'll say, why should I use you as my listing, as my buyer agent? And don't worry, you don't have to answer.
I could have.
Actually, she was very confident, I have to tell you. She was like, bring it on. All right. She didn't just do this part, though. But anyway, it was in the eyes. Anyway, if they could confidently answer that question, I want you all to ask yourself that. If someone just randomly walks up to you and says, why should I use you as my buyer agent? How confidently and succinct are you going to answer that question? And if you can't, you better get that going. Okay, you better get that going. So the point is, just because you didn't tell them and ask them, it's amazing how much business we lose when we just don't ask for it. I tell them, one of my first sales in real estate was, I was taking floor duty. Most of you don't even know what that is anymore, but we used to sit in the office and answer telephones when people actually would call us. And this guy called up and he asked me about a house that was in the paper, and I said, blah, 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 blah. I said, I'm off in 30 minutes. Do you want to see it? And he said to his wife, want to go see it? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, I'll meet you down there. So we went down there. I showed these people the house. It was a vacant house on a lockbox. We went right in. This is the God's honest truth. We went through it. I said, hey, have a look through yourselves. I'm going to be over here at the front door. I'll lock it up. We went outside. After they took the second pass, I said, did you like the house? And I said, yeah, it was nice. And I said, do you want to make an offer? And he looked at his wife and he said, you want to make an offer? And she said, yeah, why don't we? And we wrote an offer on it right then and there and sold the house. And when I went into work the next day, because this was a Sunday morning, because I was the only person in my office that was willing to take the Sunday morning floor duty shift, because it was early. And I went to my office the next day and told everybody about it. You know what they said to me? Lucky. There's a person in this room who sold his first house in weeks. And I said to him, that is awesome, great job, because it doesn't count, it was my grandmother's. It's exactly what is supposed to happen. Okay, you're not lucky and it does count. You understand? Okay, all of these things matter.
And the harder you work, the luckier you get.
There you go, that's right. There you go. The harder you work, the luckier you get. That's exactly right. Hey, Pete, you're off the hook. There's somebody I've known longer here now. So I can really leave. Notice how far in the back Pete's sitting, Rob? You'll learn.
I had no choice, I got here late.
Oh!
He's following the camera.
Follow
Don't
the
let him
camera,
fool
there
you.
go. All right, so anyway, so that was that's important. Sometimes I get off subject because it's important stuff, okay? But back to this. The appointment means that you have the opportunity to say to them, hey, can I be your buyer agent? And ask the question. Ask the question. Fair enough? All right, so what percentage of those are actually going to turn into contracts? Well, again, it depends on you. It depends on how aggressive you are. It depends on how good you are at explaining to people why you should be, what buyer agents do and why you should be their buyer agent. But most people are going to fall anywhere between, believe it or not, 60 to 90%. Now, this also falls back on how motivated is that buyer and how many buyers do I want to work with. Unfortunately for me, I grew up with that listing mindset to the point where I ignored buyers. My thought of working with a buyer was this: I'm showing them my listing. You want to buy this house? Sure. No. You want to buy this house? No. That's how he gets even. He's very, what do they call that? Passive aggressive. Thank you. He did that just to mess me up. You want to buy this house? No. Okay. Goodbye. Want to see this house? You see what I'm saying? That was it. That was my interaction with a buyer. So basically, my number was very low. It was very low. Okay. I didn't see it. Okay. Or more importantly, I wasn't spending the time on it. So my number would be low. Yours might be very high. I'm going to go somewhere in the middle for this example. I'm going to say about 70%. Now, by the way, if you know your numbers, if you've been tracking them, write them down. Just plug them in. Most of us, I'm assuming, don't know our numbers, but by the end of this class, you will know these numbers. So next year, you're going to load a real number in there, not an educated guess, okay? But for right now, I'm going to put in 70%. Now, just like with the listings, the more selective I am in choosing what buyers I'm going to work with, the higher the percentage I'm going to close, right? The less selective I am, the lower the number I'm going to close. So basically, if I'm only closing at about 70%, I think I'm being a little bit on the selective side. However, we have another little issue going on this year that's not going to change this year. We're in a seller's market, which means you have buyers who are ready to buy who just can't find a house. So that's going to bring your closing ratio down. Because remember, this top number here is how many of the buyers am I actually working with? The second question is how many of the ones that I'm working with are actually buying a house? So to me, I'm going to keep that at about 60%. You can work back off of your own experience and determine your number. Okay? And again, the next question is going to be how much, when I sell a house on the buyer side, what's the average sale price on the buyer side? And for this example, I'm just going to say $225,000. That's 2.25 million. That would be nice, but that wasn't my career, unfortunately. Average buyer side commission rate. Well, whatever it is, go back and look at what you did last year and see what the commissions are. And I'm just going to ask, just so I'm not having a discussion about it, 2.5, okay? So I'm going to put 2.5% in there. All right, I want to do something here. Can I just, this is one of those little pet peeves I have. Let's just say that this 250,000, this is 250,000. You're getting 3% here at $7,500. If you are discounting, right, if you take your top number, whatever it is, and you take 0.5% off of that, look at how much your pay is going down by. Those, it's funny, we talk in percentages, we forget it translates to a whole lot of real dollars. So just something to keep in mind, okay? Okay, next question, very simply, is what percentage of the business comes from the listing side? Okay, what percentage of business is coming from the listing side? Look at your sales from last year, determine how many were listing side, how many were buyer side, and that's the number that you're going to put in there. Now, remember I told you I had that listing mindset, and I was a listing agent, and I was very proud to be a listing agent? very proud to be a listing agent, to the point where we used to walk around the office that I was in, talking about how good list sellers were and how bad it was to work with buyers. That was our mindset. And if I had to answer this question back then, sadly no one ever asked me, but my answer would have been about 80 to 90% listing side and 10 to 20% buyer side. But that made me proud. I was a listing agent, right? You know what I was? I was an idiot. I am not telling you not to list houses, okay? That's not what I'm saying. List houses, but remember, the whole reason we list houses is to get buyers. So what sense did it make that I had all of these listings and I was ignoring the prize that came with the listing, the buyers? It made no sense. It made no sense. So basically, when you get to the point where you have enough listings that you can't handle the buyers, what should you do? Get a buyer agent or refer it. Refer it. At least make 25%, 30%, whatever it is that you're getting for a referral. Yeah, there you go. And we have a volunteer. All right, we have a volunteer. And she is definitely ready to tell them why she should be their agent. All right. So basically, if I see a number like 80-20 here, you have to stop and have a talk with Dean. We have to get that balanced. All right, you're losing. See, here's the thing. We had a lot of pride being listing agents, but we were also losing a ton of money. Be careful doing that. 45-55 to 55-45 is a good, healthy business. Would you agree, Dean?
Yes.
Now, I asked Dean this the last time. You know, Dean's personal numbers were probably like 80-20. But when he balanced it into Dean's team, guess what it became? 50-50. And if it didn't, he had an unhealthy mix going on there. Fair enough? So don't be afraid of working with buyers. All right. Next, we're going to talk about expenses. I have expenses broken down into two categories. The first one I call expenses. Now, because that wasn't very creative, and I'll be the first to admit that, the next one I have to get a fancy name. Cost of sale. What do you think? Did I make up for it?
Nice.
Okay. All right, so basically, let's talk about cost of sale first. Cost of sale is just split with the office. It's how much you pay to be in business. Okay, it's how much you pay. And like I said, I tell Dean, HomeSmart is a business planner wrecker. All right, I have this, it's called the Simple Business Planner, but it's very hard to figure out because you guys pay such really a small amount that it's really hard to, well, you kind of have to manually put it in other words. You have to stop and talk to Dean and say, Dean, roughly what percentage am I paying you? And most places it's about 30 to 36%. Here it's 11, I think?
It's 11% based on the average price that you're using.
Everybody hear that? So based on the average price that we're using, your cost of sale is 11%, all right? So I want you to come down here and change cost of sale to 11%. Now, if you're using a different amount, talk to Dean. He must have some chart somewhere, and he can tell you what your cost of sale is, okay? So talk to Dean, put in 11% for now, okay? Let's talk about expenses. If you have, there's a couple of expenses that will jack this number way up or bring it way down, depending on if you use it or not. First is salaries. Second is taxes. Now, I don't really talk about taxes in a course like this. So when I say net, I mean net before I pay taxes. If you want to figure your taxes in here, and you probably should, to be honest with you, this number is going to be substantially higher. If you have salaries, this number is going to be substantially higher. What we're going to do is we're going to put a number in here just as a placeholder for now, and then we're going to come back and fix it later. So here's the deal. If you don't have salaries and you're not worried about taxes, for right now, put in like 10 or 11%. 10 or 11, okay? So where it says expenses as a percentage of GCI, well, if you're wondering percentage of what, 10% of what? 10% of the gross commission income that you're bringing in based on this plan should go to expenses. If you're using salary, if you have a salary, you know, an administrator or something like that, you want to be at around 20% as a starting number, around 20. If you are figuring in taxes, depending on what you think your tax rate is, and I am no accountant, so strictly for demonstrating purposes only, I'm going to say I need to keep about 30% just for taxes, okay? So I'm going to add another 30% to whatever number you have there. So in other words, if I just have no salaries, but I want to put my taxes in, I'm going to put 41, 42%, 40 or 41% there. If I have salaries and whatnot, I'm going to put 50% there. 50% of GCI.
So, I'm sorry, for the expenses, you're saying salaries, taxes, anything else, like?
Well, we'll talk about what they are later. For right now, like I said, just run with those, because remember, we're just putting a placeholder here now, and when I get to this third tab, budget, we'll talk about other expenses, okay? So for right now, you're gonna put in 10 or 11% if it's no salaries, no taxes. Put in 20% if there's salaries, and you can put in as high as 50 to 55% if you have salaries and taxes along with your expenses. Fair enough? Okay, and then we'll come back and fine tune it later. All right, any questions on either expenses or cost of sale? No? Okay, so what did we just do? Basically, you did a little interview here that told us this. In order for me to make $160,000, I need to generate a total GCI of $209,600. In other words, that's $160,000 for me, okay? And it's also taking out all of the expenses that I need to let me keep the $160,000. I need to make $209,610 in GCI gross commission income, and I need to do almost 33 transactions a year to do that. Not too bad, not too bad. Now let's have a look at it. Let's see what this breaks down to. This is what Dean was talking about earlier. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on this. There we go. Most important number of the day. Ready? Seller listing appointments needed. This, to me, if you are going to start tracking numbers, this is the first one you should be tracking. Because if you don't get enough listing appointments, you're not going to get enough listings. If you don't get enough listings, you're not going to get enough buyers. If you don't get enough buyers and sellers, you're not going to get enough sales. You're not going to make enough money, and this whole business plan is going to just fall apart. Okay, so basically, I know that if I go out and get, based on the statistics above, if I go out and I list roughly 27 houses, 2.25 per month, every other week I have to get a listing appointment. That doesn't seem that hard to me. If I get 27 listing appointments and I'm only taking 55% of those listings, I'm going to list 15 houses. But I'm going to sell 95% of those, which means I'm going to make 14 sales. And at $250,000, 14 sales will generate a seller sold volume of $3.5 million. At a 3% commission, I will generate a seller GCI of $104,800. Does that make sense to everyone? That's half of the total GCI that I need, because I had already said my business is going to come 50-50. Okay? On the buyer side, I need to go on 44 buyer listing appointments, or basically one a week. Does that seem hard to anybody? Okay, good. I'm going to list, what did I say, 70% of those, and I'm going to take 31 buyer listings. In other words, I'm going to work with 31 buyers. Now, understand this, when I say buyer listing, I want you to get a buyer contract signed, right? I want you to. For the purpose of this business plan, I just mean you're working with them. But please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, because I get Dean will probably start to shake, okay? Dean wants you to get a buyer contract, correct, Dean?
Absolutely, whenever possible.
Crazy not to, all right? I was just as guilty as anybody else when I was selling, oh, you know, nobody else does it, why should I? Here's why. Okay, again, that same broker, you know, said to me, you're not getting a buyer contract? I said, no, nobody else does. And he said, well, when you go to list a house, would you ever list a house without a listing contract? And I'd say, no, of course not. And he'd say, same thing, what's the difference? And he's right. There's a lot of other reasons, which I don't really want to get into, but I'm sure Dean will. There are a lot of reasons to protect yourself, protect the company, and protect the customer by signing that buyer agency contract. Everybody with me on that? So, but for the purpose of this, they're working with you, okay? Which means I have 31 of them working with me, which means I'm going to sell 18 and a half, 19 of them a house, okay? I'm going to sell 19 of them a house. And if I sell 19 of them a house at $225,000 at a 2.5% commission, I'm sorry, at $225,000, I'm going to generate $4,200,000 in volume, or a buyer GCI of about $105,000. I add my buyer GCI to my seller GCI, I come up with the $209,600 that I need. Any questions on page 1?
Another page?
What's that?
There's another page?
Oh, there's 4.
Oh, no. I was pretty good here.
Yeah, you thought we were done, didn't you? Because these are good numbers. Do you learn something just here?
Yeah.
Well, good, because that's just the starting point. Now we have to figure out how we go do all this stuff, okay? So let's move on to our next tab, which is lead generation. And this tab I have broken into 2 halves, okay? Anybody who knows me and what I do for a living, my main focus in real estate, my claim to fame is lead generation and lead conversion. Okay, that is what I do. So this is a very, very important page to me. And for those of you who have trained with me before, I have always said there are 2 different ways of making money in this business, and I'm going to illustrate them right now in the easiest way I know how. Everybody ready? In this hand, I have a lead from your favorite internet lead generation site. Zillow, Realtor.com, Boomtown, Commissions Inc., whatever you're using. Don't care. I have a lead from there. In this hand, my friend Rafi told me that his next door neighbor is thinking of buying a house. I can give you one or the other. Which one do you want? Rafi's. Is there anybody here who would rather have the internet lead? Let's stop and think about that. Now again, in I don't know, 26, 27 states, God knows how many thousands of agents, not one person has ever said to me, yeah, give me that internet lead. Not once. But let's define the word lead. A lead is a person that I have not had a conversation with. In other words, I really don't know what their motivation is. I don't know what they're really looking for. I just know that they did something to indicate that they're looking to buy or sell a home, maybe. That's all a lead is. So in other words, that internet lead may buy tomorrow or it may never buy, but Rafi's neighbor may also buy tomorrow or never buy. I don't know. I haven't spoken to either of them yet. So really, these leads are a whole lot more equal than we think, aren't they? In fact, there's a chance that that internet lead is way more motivated than the Rafi lead. Make sense? However, every one of us wants this lead. Here's my question so I can drink more water. Why? That stops him every time.
You got a face-to-face.
Face-to-face, referral, it's personal. What is that getting me? It's getting me a relation. It's a warm lead. See, here's what's happening. Lead generation is no longer our problem. Lead conversion is. You know why we all want this lead? This one's way easier to convert than this one. In fact, statistics tell us 8 to 10 phone calls to get into a relationship with that internet lead, if we get into one at all. 1 to 2 phone calls to get into a relationship. And honestly, because somebody said it, there's only 1 degree of separation, this guy's probably going to be a little bit more honest with me than this guy. Now, he's not going to tell me, yeah, I'm ready to do something when he knows that we both know the same person. So this is a better lead. Can we all, look, all leads are good. All leads are good, except for the ones that are just, bogus information. That's, whatever. But the fact of the matter is all leads are good, but referral leads are way better, aren't they? Here's the problem. In our industry today, the vast majority of the training and coaching and consulting is happening from people outside of our industry. They are not teaching you how you can make money. They are teaching you how they can make more money. Now, I understand I'm a vendor. I am here to make more money for my guys over here. I get that. But I'm not trying to sell you anything at the end of this. You see what I'm saying? My point is this. I want you to be very, very careful. And I want you to consider that there are 2 ways of selling real estate. There's the people that you have targeted, your sphere of influence. And these are the people that your job is to get top of mind from. Who knows what top of mind means? Top of mind? Say that again? They always think of me. Whenever they think of real estate, either they drive by a real estate sign or somebody mentions buying or selling a home, you have to pop into their head. You have to pop into their head. Why is that important? Well, didn't I tell you earlier that 70% of sellers only call one realtor? Well, which one do you think they're calling? The one that they thought of first or the one they thought of fourth? You need top of mind, okay? Whether you like it or not, and there are a lot of realtors for some reason who don't like it, and hopefully by the time we go through the sheet you will, whether you realize, whether you like it or not, your sphere of influence is going to account for a minimum 70 to 80% of your business without you even trying. Naturally, because like we said earlier, it mushrooms, right? So as a direct or an indirect result of your sphere of influence, 70 to 80% of your business will come from it. Dean,
Agreed.
you're a top producing agent. Where does most of your business come from?
Referrals and past clients.
Exactly. Pete, where's your business come from?
Referrals and past clients.
And that's Mark.
Referrals and past clients.
Mine was referrals and past clients. Watch this. People in the mortgage industry. Where does your business come from?
Referrals and past clients.
Past clients and referrals.
Oh, okay, to be different.
Yeah.
Rob, that's Rafi. All right, that's where it's going to come from, okay? Unfortunately, look, I say this all the time, and this is not a knock on Zillow, so don't please understand, please hear me out. If Zillow was around when I get into real estate, I wouldn't have made it through my first year. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but because I would have been out leveraging, spending money that I didn't have to spend yet. And I would have said, oh wow, these guys are giving me leads, so I'm going to have sales faster, so I'm going to have to spend some money, but then I'm going to sell houses really quick, and I'm going to make money, and it's all going to be fine. What would have most likely happened was I would have bought the leads and chased them for 6 to 18 months, and by then I would have run out of money and I would have been out of the business. See, this column right here, this haven't met column that I'll talk about next, this is your leveraging column. This is what you do once you're already making money. Does everybody understand that? Red light, green light. Spend a little and stop. Watch. Make sure you're making money from it and then go spend some more. But don't spend anything until you're making money first. Fair enough? So with that said, let's have a look at just how expensive both of these things are. So now first of all of your numbers from the economic model carried over here. That's why all these numbers in black are already here. Okay, it already took your numbers over. So the first question you're going to ask is, again, two halves. We're going to do this half first. Sphere of influence first, then we'll do the haven't met half, okay? What percentage of your business is going to come from your sphere of influence? Now, I was doing an example for someone there. It would never, for a newer agent, it would never be 50-50, okay? Too expensive, as you'll see. If you're a brand new agent, honestly, a brand new agent, it should probably be 95 to 100% on this side, money-wise, okay? However, I'm going to just say that I've been doing this for a little while. I have a little money to spend on internet lead gen and stuff like that. So I'm going to say 80-20. Sound good? I want 80% of my business to come from my sphere of influence. It'll change that number to 20. And what it says is, okay, then you need 26 sales from your sphere, and you need 7 sales from your haven't mets. Okay? Great. Next question is this. What's my business ratio? What number of people that do I have to have top of mind from in order to get one sale? So basically there's been a lot of research done on this. A lot of research done on this. And the number that came back in the early 2000s was 6. A lot of us remember that number, correct? 6. In other words, if I had top of mind from 6 people, I was either going to get business from one of those 6 or a referral from one of those 6. Some more research and a couple of changes in our industry. Number 1, more realtors, and number 2, people live in their house a couple of years longer, tell us that it's probably closer to 1 in 10 now. Now, I put this number 10 in red. I firmly believe that 10 is on the high side. In other words, I believe that if you have top of mind, not just put 10 people in your database, understand, you actually have top of mind from 10 people, at least one of them will need you this year, or at least one of them will give you a referral this year. However, I understand there are people who simply don't believe it, and if their business plan is based on a number that they don't believe, then they don't believe in their business plan. So therefore, if you think you need to put a higher number there, I made it red so you can go ahead and change it. I'm going to leave it at 10. Is that okay with everybody? I'm going to leave it at 10. Okay? So basically, let me try to defend that number very quickly. How long does the average person live in their home right now? 7 years. So if I know 10 people that own a home, oh yes.
If I may, NAR is
Please.
saying it's 9 years now.
It's 9 years now, fine. And I've always said 7 to 9 anyway, so that's perfect. So 7 to 9, let's just say it's 9. Hell, let's say it's 10. So if I know 10 people, and I have top of mind from all of them, and they'll all live in their house for no more than 10 years, aren't the odds really good that one of them needs a realtor this year? And if I have top of mind, aren't the odds really good I'm the one they're gonna call? Mhm. And what about the people that don't own a house? Can they refer me business? Absolutely. See, here's the thing. How many new realtors are in this room? New realtors, you can't hear this soon enough. Experienced realtors, you can't hear this often enough. Your job is not to show houses. Your job is to generate leads, and the best leads to generate are the leads that come from the people that you already know, the referral leads. So basically, in my opinion, what's your number one job as a realtor? It's to get top of mind from everybody you know. But here's the thing, it's not just getting top of mind. See, it's wonderful when somebody remembers that you're a realtor. In fact, while they're signing the listing agreement with somebody else, they might even be thinking of you. It's really important that they understand that you are a realtor and that you work by referral. You work by referral. Because a lot of people have a 9-to-5 job where they receive a paycheck and they simply don't think like we do. How many people in this room have worked in the service industry? Do you tip better than others? Probably do. We understand, okay? If you haven't, you don't even think about it. You leave whatever the standard tip is and you move on. But if we're working in the industry and we're like, wow, this girl has it really tough today. She's covering twice as many tables as she should. The kitchen's slow, but she's still smiling and happy, and the manager's back there yelling. Most people, unless you've been there in those shoes, you're not thinking it. And by the way, all the waiters and bartenders in the room are all nodding their head. Yes, yes, exactly. Okay, you see it, you're going to tip better. Well, the same thing is going to happen with us, but the opposite. See, we understand. How many of you go into a store and you don't buy, but you get the card and say, do you work on commission? Really? Just a few of us do this? Really? The rest of you don't do that?
I do.
You know why we do that? We work on commission. Okay? Because other people aren't going to think it. So if somebody is thinking of Dean listing their house with Rob, that's not okay. And whose fault is that? That would be Dean's fault. Because it's our job to make sure that they understand that we are in real estate and that we work by referral. If you are not prepared to do that, you're in for a rough, rough time. So you know people do? Oh, there's going to be vendors out there that are going to say, Rob, you don't want to ask your friends for business, do you? That makes you a beggar. Rob, you don't need this column. Rob, you need this column. You see what I'm saying? And that's where we're going to go next. So just remember, your job is not to show houses. Your job is to generate business. Fair enough? Sorry, but that's what it is. Okay. So basically, you're going to get top of mind, you're going to get good at this, and you're going to be able to get a listing or a buyer from 1 out of 10 people that you get top of mind from. So if I need to do 260 sales, okay, I'm sorry, 26 sales at 10 people having top of mind each, that means I need to have 261 people in my database to make that happen. Why 261? Because there's a little bit of rounding off going on here, okay? 261 people in the database. Next question in red, so you have to answer it, is what's the total number of people in your database right now? Right now I have 250 in there. So it tells me, okay, the contacts that needed to be added right away is 11. Right away is no more than 4 weeks. No more than 4 weeks.